Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about the delightfully daffy 1987 martial arts movie American Ninja 2: The Confrontation. Now, don't worry if you haven't seen the first American Ninja, it really doesn't matter either for the purposes of this review or indeed for the movie itself. And the film begins with three surprisingly preppy looking US Marines walking into a bar, which sounds like the setup for a joke, but the only punchline here comes from a pack of notably aggressive bar patrons. They pick a fight with the Marines, beating two of them unconscious. The third Marine, it emerges, is in cahoots with the attackers. Also in cahoots with this bad guy Marine are a group bunch of ninjas who slip into the bar and spirit away the two unconscious men. Now, these are not the first Marines to disappear from this remote Caribbean base. Suspecting that he can't trust all of his own men, the local commanding officer, Wild Bill Woodward, calls in outside help to investigate what's going on. That help arrives in the form of two US Army Rangers, Joe Armstrong and Curtis Jackson. Now, inter-service rivalry between the Marines and Army would usually cause considerable friction with these newcomers, but most of the local personnel are so happy with their current assignment, replete as it is with bevies of beautiful bikini-clad women, that they seem happy enough to make the Army guys welcome. Of course, at least one of those seemingly friendly Marines has ulterior motives. Joe and Curtis soon find themselves fighting off a ninja attack. They report this to Captain Woodward, but as you might imagine, he doesn't put much credence in these claims. But he does, however, give the two men a week to investigate. Spoiler, said investigation is going to involve a whole lot more fights with ninjas. So, as you might surmise from its title, this film is nominally a sequel to the 1985 martial arts film American Ninja, but the connections are frankly very limited. While this movie features the same two main characters and acknowledges the events of the first film in passing, including a scene where Joe conjures the spirit of his former sensei in a very Luke talks to Obi-Wan's Force Ghost kind of moment, it has an entirely new setting, entirely new enemies, and an entirely new agenda. Now, as I noted previously, said new setting is nominally the Caribbean. In reality, however, the movie was principally filmed in apartheid-era South Africa, which must have been a somewhat uncomfortable experience for African American actor Steve James, who plays Curtis Jackson. Now, South Africa was at the time a popular production location for low-budget cinema due to the cheap cost of filming there, and it was a practice that would only come to an end when the United States finally imposed economic sanctions. And by the time that happened, they'd already made American Ninjas 3 and 4. Now, American Ninja received negative reviews, as did the first film, and it was also less commercially successful than the first film, recouping $4 million in box office sales. That was less than half of the original's take, but given that it costs less than 1/10 of that amount, I doubt any of the money people were complaining. Certainly, it was enough that they ultimately made 3 more movies in this series. So, how is American Ninja 2? Well, I mean, frankly, it's every bit as terrible as you might expect of a cheaply made film of that name. But it's the kind of terrible that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I shall explain why, starting with the way the movie looks. Which is so deliriously 80s that I'm going to forgo my usual pattern of simply showing the movie's poster or DVD cover and instead present you with some images taken from the movie itself, because I feel that they need to be seen to be believed. Take the top image on the left of your screen. That mustachioed fellow with the football, that's Captain Wild Bill Woodward, while he's in his office conducting official US Marines business. I suspect that in the real Marines, sleeveless Hawaiian shirts are not acceptable attire while on duty. I mean, at least the guys in the lower photo have an excuse for turning up in swimming trunks and wetsuits. They were attacked while off duty and wanted to report the incident as a matter of urgency. Don't worry though, when going into combat, Wild Bill understands that he needs to be properly equipped. Now, that doesn't mean he puts on a uniform or anything crazy like that. This isn't that kind of movie. But he does add a cowboy hat. Now, there's plenty of other amusingly absurd design, such as the villain's secret lair. The interiors for this are very clearly filmed at a rec centre or high school, and there's no real effort to disguise that fact. Mind you, the script would have us believe that this is the Lion's Lair, located on Blackbeard Island, so absurdity is definitely not limited to the visuals. And on the subject of the absurd, let's talk about the hordes of villainous ninja. Oh, and the super ninjas. Because without getting too deep into the weeds of the nonsensical story, the bad guy of this film is attempting to make some kind of genetically engineered super soldier ninjas. That's why he started kidnapping Marines. He wants them for his process. The problem is the results of his genetic experiments aren't shown to be very impressive. In point of fact, there's a scene in the film where the bad guy brings in a bunch of evil dictators and generals so they can see his fearsome super ninjas in action, where apparently see him in action means watch my head of security, who isn't a super ninja, clean house with a whole bunch of the guys I'm supposedly trying to sell you. Doesn't seem like a terribly convincing sales pitch to me. Also, this particular Beverly of ninjas don't seem to quite grasp the whole stealth aspect of the ninja ethos. Those black pajamas might be great for prowling around the streets of shogunate Japan, guys, but I'm not sure they're all that suitable when you want to attack somebody on a beach. Perhaps the real flaw of the film, though, and the only thing I actually wish they'd change, because I love all the other stupidity, is that this movie has the wrong lead. The main character, Joe Armstrong, is played by model-turned-actor Michael Dudikoff, and as a leading man, he's rather lacking, a fact that is particularly obvious every time he's on screen with Steve James, who plays Curtis Jackson. On pretty much every front, Dudikoff falls short of his co-star. Yes, Dudikoff is handsome and in good shape, but Steve James is more handsome and in even better shape. The fact the movie, I suspect, is trying to hide by never having Dudikoff take his shirt off when he's on screen with James. Now, it's also true that Dudikoff appears to have been a decent chap, or still is, as far as I know. There's no mention on his Wikipedia page of him ever being accused of any problematic behaviour, and he reportedly turned down American Ninja 3 in part because it would be filmed in South Africa and he opposed apartheid. But being a decent chap doesn't necessarily translate to being a good actor or having on-screen charisma, a fact that is made abundantly clear in American Ninja 2. Dudikoff spends a lot of time going for something that is probably meant to be stoic and deadpan, but instead comes off as more disengaged and bored. Now, I'm not saying that Steve James was a technically more skilled actor. He's no Denzel Washington or Morgan Freeman, but he shows great energy and decent charisma in the role of Curtis Jackson and pretty much steals the movie every time he's given an opportunity. The one obvious reason that James is not the lead is unfortunately that of his skin colour. Like a lot of media, especially older media, and keep in mind that this movie is nearly 40 years old as of the time I record this video, this is quite possibly unconsciously a very white movie with a white lead and an overwhelmingly white cast despite its supposed setting, which is a bit of a downer note on which to end my video on a movie that is essentially just 90 minutes of ninja nonsense. But the real world often messes up even the best fictional narratives, and this movie is far short of being the best of narratives. Next time, I'm going to look at the action horror film The Gorge, which just came out this year. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've seen American Ninja 2, let me know what you thought of it.